Greetings, everyone. Greetings and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at a demo called Dagon, and this is based on H.P. Lovecraft's short story from 1919, Dagon. It's one of his best stories. It's very straightforward and to the point, and it's one of the first stories that describes an encounter with a deep one. It involves a shipwrecked sailor from World War One. He ends up his ship is sunk by a German ship, and he ends up on a mysterious, sort of like a volcanic island. He's not really sure, and HP does a great job describing like the smell of rotting fish, just the bleakness of the island, um, the sun just being almost black in the sky, and the light just being blinding from the reflection of the water, and how he's just desperate to understand his situation. He becomes addicted to morphine later on in life because he has an encounter with like a mysterious sea creature, like a mysterious obelisk, just in the middle of this strange island that shouldn't be there. And yeah, it's a great story. It's one of my favorites. It's just a short read, like 15 minutes to read it. It's a great story. And we're going to be taking a look at this demo called Dagon. So I'm going in blind. It's going to be great. I'm going to turn the lights down low and just jump into it. And let's do it. Let's check out Dagon. Alright guys, so here we are. Thank you for taking the time to check out our demo. The game is at an early stage of development, so please report any problems you encounter on our Steam forums. And I'll have the link to this game in the description of the video. We'd also love to hear your feedback, and it'll help us improve the final version of Dagon. Great. I love stuff like this. I love indie developers that really just take on these passion projects. It's really great to see. We're currently working on our translations in the VR version. Thank you for your patience. Okay. This is going to look incredible in VR. Okay, so here we are, Dagon. Let's just take a look at the options here. We're going to turn the volume down just a bit so you can hear my voice, my commentary, and we're going to
I am writing this under an appreciable
dive
mental
right in.
strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
And by the way, this is directly from the story. This is the exact words of the narrator. Oh, wow, okay, so we're already in. Okay.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
Now, at the end of the story, the narrator is in a hospital back on the mainland, and he just can't get it out of his head that he thinks that this creature is following him. And the story actually ends with him believing that he sees the creature's hands, and he throws himself from the window.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Okay.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
And this is all directly from the narrator's words from the story. This is direct quote. That's awesome. I love how they did that. We can't seem to explore the room. Oh, or is it just maybe point and click? Let's take a look here. Well, the full version will feature many interesting facts about, among others, the story on which the game is based, the historical setting, and the other H.P. Lovecraft. They're scattered around locations, so make sure to look around and try to find them all. The demo features only a couple of facts. You've just found the first one. Okay. Interesting. Morphine used during the Great War. Morphine entered into use in the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War and World War I. It was also sold without restrictions until 1914. Very interesting. I was not aware of this. Morphine became more popular after the invention of the hypodermic syringe around 1954. Frederick Serturner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium after Morpheus, the Greek god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, was already a big problem in the United States. Wow. Okay. Well, first impressions, the graphics are interesting. I wish that you could move around the room and look around, but that's okay. Let's just see what's on the table.
It was in one of the
here.
most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. He was in the middle. He was in the middle of the Pacific. So this kind of does a good job painting the moonlit night. And just the vastness of the ocean. The bleakness of the situation. Okay, let's see if we can discover any hints. So it seems like this is sort of like a point-and-click adventure. I can't seem to really interact with anything else, so we are going to click on this ship here to progress the story.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
I also really love the sort of like, it looks like an ink blotch, and it kind of looks like a graphic novel, or basically just like an interactive comic book, essentially. That's the impression that I'm getting.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Dagon was written around a month after the United States entered World War I. Lovecraft was actively interested in its course. He composed many poems in which he gave encouragement to soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. He tried to enlist in the army, but even though he passed a physical exam, his mother prevented him from going to the war. She has threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I do not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. Oh, I Am Providence, The Life and Times of H.P. Lovecraft. S.T. Joshi. I want to get that book. Consider myself a huge Lovecraft fan, and I'm very interested in his life. I did not know this little snippet, though. I was not aware of that. I know he was an only child. Or, like, at least the only male child in the family. I'm not sure if he had a sister or not.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Man, this is incredible. This is exactly from the story.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
And I do like the voice actor that does this. Dagon was written in July 1917 and first published in 1919 in The Vagrant, an amateur magazine focused on the supernatural. The story was partly inspired by Lovecraft's dream and is the first of his stories that introduced an element from the Cthulhu mythos, Dagon itself. The pagan cult worshipping Dagon later appears in The Shadow over Innsmouth, one of Lovecraft's most popular stories. Okay. Yes, yes indeed. What else do we have?
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
It's oddly beautiful, just the vastness of the sea and how unsure he is of the situation, just drifting aimlessly, exactly like it describes.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
This is a great story too, in how Lovecraft describes the situation. And I just love how descriptive he is with it all. The heaving vastness of unbroken blue. It's beautiful. I love the passage at the end. I hope that it shows this about puny, war-exhausted mankind just being dragged down at the end.
The change happened whilst I slept.
And I love how they build the suspense, because he suddenly wakes up adrift on some kind of strange island.
Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
And now here he has the overturned boat. This is amazing. This is kind of exactly how I envisioned the island myself, like when I read this story. You know, like when sand is wet and the sun is like beaming down, it kind of just has this like reflective quality, you know, and wow, okay. And I think at some point he decides it's actually easier to travel at night because the sun is just so blinding during the day, so he just like huddles underneath the boat for a little bit of comfort before he continues. Okay, so let's see what we got here. All kinds of slimy critters.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
I love that. A slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations.
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain.
This is really well made. They really brought this story in a good visual way.
Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. Supernatural horror in literature. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old. But I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. The Dweller in Darkness, 1927, Donald Wandre. Yeah, he used the imagery of the deep sea to kind of push, like, just how alien it seems compared to land. At you know, like, things from the sea just seem so strange and alien, and he wanted something familiar for the mythos, something that we can kind of relate to, but at the same time is still like very distant and alien to us. At least that's how I see it. I wish you could move around the island a little more
As I
and
crawled
explain,
into the stranded boat,
or explore
I
rather.
realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
And that's actually an interesting observation by the narrator. That makes sense, you know. You could kind of tell that at somewhat recently this whole landmass was underneath water. Because the ocean is nowhere to be found, but there's water on the sand and there's fish everywhere.
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Yeah, that's another interesting observation as well, is there's nothing eating these dead animals. You would think there would be gulls and other critters, crabs. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creations of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created when superheated pressurized rock is ejected from a volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae that cling to it. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga in Polynesia eventually reached Australia. Very interesting. I like the trivia sprinkled in there. That's kind of cool.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Yeah, that's bleak, you know, he's just kind of sitting on the boat, or like sitting near it. Shot of the moon is very beautiful.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Interesting. That was a nice little teaser there. If you'd like to learn what eldritch horror drove our protagonist to the depths of madness, wishlist the game and wait for the full release. Okay. I think that I will do that. I think I will leave some feedback for them. I like the vibe. I like the presentation. It's almost like an interactive comic book, sort of, and the facts are also interesting as well. All in all, I think it looks good and it feels good. I like the voice acting. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan, so I will be following along on the development of this game, and hopefully we get the full version soon. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.